I was only accidentally added to the family group chat, but what I scrolled through changed everything. For 7 years and over 900 messages. They used the same cruel nickname to bet on exactly when I would break. I thought they had won until my grandmother found out. She did not just get angry, she waited for the perfect moment to flip the switch and expose them all. My name is Ember Watson. I am 34 years old, and up until 6 weeks ago, I believed that my family loved me in their own broken, distant way. I thought my exclusion from the inner circle was simply a matter of chemistry, or perhaps a lingering side effect of being the daughter from my mother's first, failed marriage. I told myself that I was just difficult to love. I told myself that if I worked harder, earned more money, or dressed better, the gap between us would close. I was wrong. I was never a member of the family to them. I was the intermission entertainment. It happened on a Tuesday, at 11:42 at night. The apartment was quiet, the kind of heavy silence you only get in the suburbs when the traffic dies down. I had just finished a double shift at the Northbridge Clinical Response Unit and was sitting on my couch, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, trying to decompress from 12 hours of handling other people's emergencies. My phone sat on the coffee table. Screen dark. Then, it buzzed. A single short vibration that dragged across the wood. I glanced over, expecting an automated email or a spam notification. Instead, the screen lit up with a banner that froze the air in my lungs. Cassidy has added you to Real Family Only. I stared at the words. My half-sister. Cassidy. The golden child. The one who remembered my birthday 3 days late every year but never forgot to post a tribute to me on social media for clout. She had added me to a group chat, but it was the name of the group that made my stomach turn over. Real Family Only. My thumb hovered over the screen. Logic told me it was a mistake. Cassidy was clumsy with technology when she had a few glasses of wine. She meant to add someone else. She meant to forward a photo. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. I unlocked the phone and tapped the notification. The app opened, and my world ended. It was not a new group. That was the first thing that hit me. When you create a new group, the chat history is empty. It is a blank slate. This was not a blank slate. This was a library. My phone lagged for a solid 10 seconds as it tried to download the server history. The scroll bar on the right side of the screen shrank smaller and smaller, becoming a microscopic sliver as thousands of messages loaded into the cache. 7 years. The timestamp at the very top of the recovered history dated back 7 years. I sat there, the tea turning cold in my hand, and I began to read. I did not read from the bottom up. I scrolled. I scrolled past the memes, past the photos of vacations I was never invited to, past the planning of surprise parties I was told were last-minute get-togethers. I scrolled until my thumb cramped, all the way to the beginning. The first message was from my mother. Monica. Date, October 14th, 7 years ago. Monica. Just made the group. Don't add Ember. She will just bring the mood down with her divorce drama. I need a place where we can actually breathe. Cassidy. LOL. Done. Name it Real Family Only so we don't forget. I felt a physical blow to my chest. Precise and sharp. 7 years ago. I was going through a divorce that nearly broke me. I remembered that week. I had gone to my mother's house, crying, looking for a shoulder to lean on. She had hugged me. She had told me, "We are here for you, honey. Take all the time you need." 10 minutes after she hugged me, she had sent that text. I kept reading. It became a compulsion. I was dissecting my own autopsy while I was still breathing. They did not call me Ember in this group. It was rare to see my actual name. Instead, they used a nickname, a code, TCC. It appeared everywhere. Aunt Kendra. Did TCC ask to borrow the truck yet? Cassidy. No, but she's looking at me with those sad puppy eyes. God, it is exhausting. Monica. We have to be nice. It's what Mom would want. Just treat her like the charity case she is, and maybe she will leave early. The charity case. That was who I was to them. I was not a daughter, a sister, or a niece. I was a tax write-off. I was a mandatory donation they had to make to feel like good Christians. I scrolled through the timeline of my life, seeing it reflected in a funhouse mirror of cruelty. 5 years ago, I lost my job at the marketing firm. I remembered the shame. I remembered borrowing $300 from Aunt Kendra to cover rent, money I paid back with interest 2 weeks later. In the chat, it was a game. Cassidy. Alert, alert, TCC, just lost the job. Who had June in the pool? Uncle Rob. I had August. Damn it, I owe you $20. Monica. I told you she wouldn't last 6 months. She doesn't have the grit. She is too soft. They had a betting pool. They were gambling on my failures. I saw the transactions. Venmo confirmations, screenshots dropped into the chat. $20 here, $50 there. They were betting on when my car would break down. They were betting on when I would gain back the weight I lost. They were betting on how long I would stay single. My hands started to shake. Not a little tremble, but a violent seizing that made it hard to hold the phone. I had to set it down on the table, propping it up against the sugar bowl so I could keep reading without dropping it. I needed to stop. I knew I needed to stop, but then I saw the date from 3 years ago. It was the year I found out I likely would never be able to have children. It was a medical trauma that I had only shared with my mother. I had sat in her kitchen, sobbing into a paper towel, feeling like less than a woman, feeling that hollow ache that only people who want a family can understand. She had stroked my hair. She had whispered that I was enough. She had said, "Your legacy isn't biology, Ember, it's who you are." I scrolled to that date in the chat. Monica. Just got the news from TCC. Looks like the bloodline stops with her. Aunt Kendra. Oh, that is tragic. Is she okay? Monica. She is a mess, but honestly, it is a blessing in disguise. At least she has no kids. Less mess for us to clean up when she inevitably crashes again. Can you imagine TCC trying to raise a human? She can barely pay her electric bill. Cassidy. Bullet dodged. Plus, that means more room in the will for the actual grandkids, right? Kidding. Mostly. The air left the room. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen sink and dry heaved. Nothing came up. Just the bitter taste of bile and betrayal. At least she has no kids. My mother, the woman who gave birth to me. She looked at my infertility, the greatest grief of my life, and saw it as a convenience, a way to keep the mess contained. I walked back to the couch. I sat down. The shaking stopped. It was strange. One moment, I was vibrating with a mixture of sorrow and rage so hot, it felt like it would melt my skin. The next moment, the temperature dropped. I felt cold. Ice cold. It was a clarity I had never experienced before. It was the feeling of a surgeon snapping on latex gloves. If they thought I was a charity case, if they thought I was weak, I would show them exactly what I was capable of. I did not throw the phone. I did not call Cassidy screaming. I did not drive to my mother's house and bang on the door. I went to work. I opened the file manager on my phone. I created a new folder. I named it simply, The Truth. Then, I began to screenshot. I started from the beginning. I was methodical. I captured every instance of the nickname TCC. I captured the betting pools, making sure to get the timestamps and the names of the participants. I captured the insults about my appearance, my career, my car, my apartment. I organized them. Subfolder 1, the bets. Subfolder 2, the financial mockery. Subfolder 3, the infertility comments. Subfolder 4, the inheritance plotting. Yes, there was inheritance plotting. I found messages from 6 months ago discussing my grandmother. Margaret, they were talking about her assets. They were joking about how to ensure TCC didn't get her claws into the house. They discussed how to manipulate Grandma's confusion on her bad days. I screenshotted it all. It took me 45 minutes. 45 minutes to archive 7 years of hatred. My battery dropped to 12%. When I was done, I had over 300 images saved to my cloud drive, backed up on my laptop, and emailed to a burner account I used for spam. I looked at the group chat one last time. Real family only. 6 members. Cassidy had still not realized her mistake. It was almost midnight. She was probably asleep. Or maybe she was drunk, laughing at a party, unaware that she had just handed me the nuclear codes. I tapped the text box. My fingers hovered over the keys. I could have written a novel. I could have poured out 7 years of pain. I could have asked why. I could have begged for an explanation. But the Ember they knew, the charity case, the soft one, the mess, would have done that. The Ember sitting on this couch was someone else. I typed 5 words. Thanks for the receipts. I hit send. Then, immediately, before the read receipts could even populate, I hit leave group. I set the phone down. For 3 seconds, there was silence. Then, the explosion. My phone lit up like a strobe light. Incoming call. Cassidy. Incoming call. Mom. Message from Cassidy. OMG. Ember, wait. Message from Cassidy. It was a joke. It's just a roast group. Message from Mom. Ember, answer the phone now. Message from Cassidy. Don't be dramatic. You are taking this out of context. Incoming call. Aunt Kendra. The phone buzzed and danced across the table. A frantic, desperate little creature. They were panicking. They were not panicking because they were sorry. They were panicking because they had been caught. They were panicking because the charity case now held the leverage. I watched the screen flash. Mom, Cassidy, Mom, Cassidy, gaslighting, panic, threats, begging, message from Cassidy. Please don't show Grandma. It would kill her. You don't want to kill Grandma, do you? I stared at that message on the lock screen. They were already trying to use my love for my grandmother as a weapon. They were already spinning the narrative. I reached out and pressed the power button on the side of the phone. I held it down until the screen went black and the device powered off completely. The room returned to silence. I walked to the window and looked out at the streetlights of the city. I felt light, unbearably, terrifyingly light. The weight of trying to please them, the heavy cloak of trying to belong. It was gone. It had been incinerated by the glow of a smartphone screen. I was alone, truly alone now, but for the first time in 34 years, I knew exactly where I stood. I was not the charity case. I was the one holding the match. That night, I did not cry anymore. I woke up. To understand why the silence in my apartment felt so electric the night I left the group chat, you have to go back 6 weeks. You have to understand the phone call that started the countdown clock, even if I did not know it was ticking at the time. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of gray, washed-out day that makes the suburbs feel like a holding cell. I was in my kitchen, meal prepping for the week ahead. That was my ritual. Tupperware containers lined up like soldiers. Boiled chicken, roasted broccoli, brown rice. It was not a culinary passion. It was a survival tactic. When you work 60 hours a week at the Northbridge Clinical Response Unit, you do not have time to cook on a Tuesday. You eat standing up over the sink, or you eat in your car between crisis calls. My phone rang. Cutting through the hum of the refrigerator, I glanced at the screen, expecting the clinic asking me to cover a shift. Instead, a picture of a golden retriever popped up. That was the contact photo for my grandmother, Margaret Calloway. It was her dog, Buster, who had passed away 3 years ago, but I never had the heart to change it because she loved that dog more than she liked most people. I wiped my wet hands on a dish towel and picked up. Grandma never called me, not directly. In the unspoken hierarchy of the Watson-Calloway clan, communication was a trickle-down economy, and I was at the bottom catching the scraps. Usually my mother, Monica, would call to tell me what Grandma needed, or Cassidy would send a vague text telling me to show up somewhere, usually with the wrong time, so I would arrive late and look disorganized. "Hello, Grandma?" I answered, leaning against the counter. "Ember." Her voice came through the line. It sounded clear, stronger than it had been in months. Usually, her voice had a tremor, a rasp of fatigue that came with being 82 and fighting a losing battle with arthritis and heart failure. But today, She sounded like the woman who used to run a real estate empire in downtown Cloverbend. "Are you working today?" "No, ma'am," I said. "Just prepping for the week. Is everything okay? Do you need me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. My hand was already reaching for my car keys. That was my reflex. For the last 10 years. "Grandma is calling" meant Grandma needs something fixed, cleaned, or carried. "I am fine. Ember," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Put your keys down. I know you are already halfway to the door." I paused, my fingers hovering over the key fob. "Okay, I am putting them down. I am calling because I wanted to ask you something personally," she said. "In 6 weeks, on the 20th of next month, I am hosting a dinner. I am calling it my legacy night. It is going to be at Cloverbend Hall." I blinked. Cloverbend Hall was not a place for a casual family dinner. It was a historic venue, the kind of place people rented for six-figure weddings or political fundraisers. It had crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars and velvet drapes that cost more than my annual salary. "Cloverbend Hall?" I repeated. "That is big. Is this for a special occasion? Is it your birthday?" "No. Your birthday is in March." "It is not a birthday," she said sharply. "It is a statement, and I want you there. Ember, I want you to make sure you request the night off work. Do not let that clinic work you into an early grave." I laughed softly. "I will put in the request tomorrow. Who else is coming?" "Everyone," she said. "Your mother, Cassidy, your Aunt Kendra, the whole lot. But I wanted to make sure I told you myself. I did not want there to be any miscommunication about the time or the date." The way she said miscommunication carried a weight. It was dry, knowing. It hit me then that she knew. She knew about the times I was told brunch started at 11 when it actually started at 10. She knew about the times I was told it was just family, so I showed up in jeans, only to find Cassidy and Mom in cocktail dresses entertaining business partners. "I appreciate that, Grandma," I said, feeling a sudden lump in my throat. "I need you there, Ember," she said, her voice dropping a decibel, becoming more intimate. "You have been the only constant for me this last decade. I know I do not say it enough, but I see it." I stared at the half-filled container of brown rice. Those words felt foreign. In my family, affection was transactional. You were praised when you were useful, or when you made the family look good. Cassidy was praised for being beautiful, for marrying a man with a trust fund, for posting photos that got 3,000 likes. I was the one who drove Grandma to her rheumatologist appointments every second Tuesday for 7 years. I was the one who sat in the waiting room reading outdated magazines while she got her injections. I was the one who went over to her house when the heater broke in the dead of winter, waiting 4 hours for the repairman because Mom was at a gala, and Cassidy couldn't deal with the dust. I remembered the nights I spent sitting by her bedside when her insomnia was bad. We would not even talk much. I would just hold her hand, her skin like papery parchment over brittle bones, and she would tell me stories about Grandpa, or about the business she built from the ground up in the 70s. Cassidy never heard those stories. Cassidy only visited when the lighting was good. I had watched it happen a dozen times. Cassidy would sweep into Grandma's house, looking like she just stepped out of a catalog, holding a bouquet of flowers that she bought at the gas station but arranged to look expensive. She would snap a selfie with Grandma, caption it, "Love my Gigi so much, cherish your elders," and post it before she even sat down. Then, 10 minutes later, she would check her watch, make an excuse about a yoga class or a brunch date, and vanish. She got the likes. I got the dirty dishes she left in the sink. "I love you, Grandma," I said, and I meant it. "I will be there. I promise." "Good," she said. Then there was a pause, a long, heavy pause that stretched over the phone line. I could hear her breathing, a rhythmic, wheezing sound that reminded me of how frail she really was. "Ember," she said again. "How are you? Really?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm fine," I said automatically. It was the script I had memorized. "I am fine. Work is good. The apartment is fine. No, I am not dating anyone. Do not lie to me, she said gently. I am old. I am not blind. You look tired. Honey, you look like you are carrying the weight of the world. I gripped the phone tighter. It's just, work is busy. The ER has been overflowing lately. Flu season. It is not just work, she said. It is everything. I know they are hard on you. Your mother, Kendra, I know they make you feel small. My breath hitched. We never spoke about this. It was the elephant in the room that we both danced around. We both pretended that the snide comments at Thanksgiving were just jokes. We both pretended that my exclusion from family vacations was just a logistical error. They have their own way of doing things, I said carefully. I did not want to badmouth my mother to her own mother. That was not how I was raised. They are cruel, Grandma said. The word hung in the air, stark and undeniable. And they think I do not notice because I am old, and I sit in my chair and I nod. But I noticed how they treated you after the divorce. The divorce, even now. Hearing the word made my stomach tighten. 3 years ago, my life had fallen apart. My husband left. My finances imploded. And I had to move into a studio apartment that was smaller than Cassidy's walk-in closet. For a normal family, a daughter's divorce is a tragedy. For my family, it was a spectator sport. It was content. I remembered walking into a room and hearing them stop talking abruptly, seeing the smirk on Cassidy's face, the pitying, patronizing look in my mother's eyes. They did not help me pack. They did not offer me a place to stay. They just watched, like they were watching a reality TV show, waiting for the season finale where I completely crashed and burned. I am over it, Grandma, I lied. It was a long time ago. You are strong, Ember, she said. Stronger than all of them combined. That is why they pick on you. Weak people always try to break the strong ones because it makes them feel powerful. I did not know what to say. I felt tears pricking my eyes, hot and sudden. Thank you, I whispered. Listen to me, she said, her voice becoming steel again. At the legacy night, I want you to come with your head high, wear something beautiful. Do not let Monica tell you what to wear, and listen to me closely. I am listening. Do not leave early, she commanded. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says to you, no matter how uncomfortable they try to make you feel, you stay until the very end. I want the whole family to hear something, and I want you to be in the front row when they hear it. A chill ran down my spine. It was not a cold chill. It was a vibration of anticipation. It felt like the air pressure drop before a tornado touches down. What are you going to tell them? I asked. The truth, she said simply. I have been silent for too long. Ember, I have been watching, and I have been taking notes. It is time to clear the ledger. She did not say anything else about it. She shifted the conversation to the weather, asking if I thought it would snow next week, asking about my cat, asking if I had tried the new soup recipe she clipped from the newspaper for me. We talked for another 20 minutes. It was the most normal, mundane conversation in the world, yet it felt heavy with subtext. Every laugh felt like a goodbye. Every pause felt like a calculation. When we finally hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time. The silence of the apartment usually felt lonely on Sundays. It usually felt like a reminder that I was 34, divorced, and childless, living on the fringes of a family that tolerated me at best. But that day, the silence felt different. It felt like the quiet of a theater before the curtain goes up. I looked at the calendar on my fridge. I counted the weeks. 6 weeks until legacy night. I did not know then that Cassidy would add me to that group chat. I did not know I would see 7 years of their venom written out in black and white. I did not know that the charity case was their favorite joke. But standing there, clutching my phone, I felt a shift. My grandmother was planning something. She was not just throwing a party. She was setting a stage. I went back to my meal prep. I packed the chicken. I sealed the containers. I put on my scrubs for the next day's shift. I went through the motions of my life, the life they mocked. the life they bet against. But as I worked, I kept hearing her voice in my head. The truth does not belong to the wicked. Wait, she did not say that in Vietnamese. She said it in English in my memory. But the sentiment was universal. She said, "I have been taking notes. I went to bed early that night, but I could not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the 10 years I had given them, the 10 years of trying to buy their love with service. I thought about the hours I spent scrubbing Grandma's floors while Cassidy was at brunch. I thought about the times I drove home in the snow, exhausted, while they were warm and together in the family group chat I wasn't part of. Little did I know. The invitation to Clover Bend Hall was not just an invitation, it was a summons. And Grandma was not just the hostess. She was the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And I was just the witness who had no idea she was about to be handed the smoking gun, 3 weeks before the night that would end my family as I knew it. I picked up the phone to call my mother. It was a Tuesday. Late morning. I was on my break at the clinic, sitting in my car with the engine running to keep the heat blasting against the bitter wind. The invitation to Legacy Night was pinned to my refrigerator door at home, but the details were sparse. Clover Bend Hall was the only real clue. And that clue terrified me. Clover Bend Hall could mean anything from a high-tea fundraiser to a black-tie gala. And if there was one thing the Watsons loved more than money, it was watching me fail a social test. I dialed Monica's number. She answered on the second ring, the background noise of a busy cafe clattering behind her. "Make it quick. Ember," she said. "No hello. No how are you?" "I am meeting with the florist for the centerpieces." "I just have a question about the dinner," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Grandma's Legacy Night. I need to know the dress code. I don't want to show up underdressed." There was a pause. I could almost hear her sipping her latte. Calculating. "Oh, that," she said breezily. "Honestly, don't worry about it. It is just family. We are keeping it low-key. Just wear something nice, like that beige cardigan you have, or maybe slacks. Casual chic. We want Grandma to feel comfortable, not overwhelmed by a fashion show." "Casual chic," I repeated. "Are you sure? It is at Clover Bend Hall." "They gave us a discount on the rental because it is a weekday booking." She lied. I knew it was a lie because Clover Bend Hall did not do discounts. And the party was on a Saturday, but I wanted to believe her. "Don't go buying anything new. Ember, you really cannot afford it, and it would just look like you're trying too hard. Just be yourself." "Okay," I said. "Casual. Thanks, Mom." "Right. Bye." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. It made sense, in a twisted way. Grandma hated fuss. Maybe they were toning it down for her sake. I felt a wave of relief. I did not have $500 to drop on a gown. I could wear my black work slacks and a nice blouse. I could blend in. 3 days later, that relief turned into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I had to stop by my mother's house to drop off a prescription for Grandma. The pharmacy had called me, not Monica, not Cassidy, but me, because the insurance card on file had expired, and I was the only one who ever picked up the phone to sort it out. I had paid the copay of $80 out of my own pocket and driven 40 minutes out of my way to deliver the pills. When I pulled into the driveway of the sprawling colonial house where I grew up, Monica's car was there, alongside Cassidy's convertible. The front door was unlocked. I walked in, shouting a hello that echoed in the foyer. No one answered. The house smelled of lilies and expensive floor polish. I walked into the kitchen to leave the pharmacy bag on the granite island, and that was when I saw it. Cassidy's iPad was propped up on the counter, next to a half-eaten kale salad. The screen was lit up, displaying a group message thread. It was not the real family-only chat. I had left that, and the silence had been glorious. This was a thread between Cassidy, Monica, and Aunt Kendra. My eyes caught the most recent message, sent just 4 minutes ago. Cassidy. Just confirmed the videographer. He arrives at 4 o'clock sharp to get the B-roll. Make sure the boys have their tuxes steamed. I froze. Tuxes. My eyes scanned up. Monica. I picked up my gown from the tailor. The gold sequins look incredible. Do you think it is too much? Aunt Kendra. It is a black tie legacy gala. Monica. Nothing is too much. We need to look like royalty for the photos. This is going to be in the Cloverbend Gazette. Cassidy. I hope TCC actually wears that beige cardigan Mom told her about. Can you imagine? She is going to look like the hired help. It will be hilarious. Monica. Shh, don't be mean. But yes, it will be a contrast. It will show everyone who actually belongs in this world and who is just visiting. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a setup. It was a deliberate, orchestrated humiliation. They wanted me to walk into a ballroom filled with tuxedos and ball gowns wearing khakis and a sweater. They wanted the videographer to capture me looking like a vagrant in the middle of their dynasty. They wanted to visually reinforce the narrative they had been spinning for 7 years, that I was the charity case, the poor relation, the one who did not fit. I placed the medication on the counter. My hand was shaking, not from sadness, but from a rage so pure it felt like adrenaline. I could have smashed the iPad. I could have screamed. Instead, I decided to give them one last chance to be human beings. Just one. I walked back out to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and dialed Cassidy. She answered on the first ring, her voice sickeningly sweet. Hey, big sis, what's up? Hey, I said, staring at the front door of the house I had just exited. I am just planning my outfit for Grandma's party. I wanted to double-check with you. Mom said it was casual, but I had a feeling I should dress up. Is it formal? I waited. I held my breath, giving her a chance. Just tell me. I thought, just say. Actually, Mom got it confused. It is black tie. Save yourself. Oh, no, definitely not formal, Cassidy said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. I am wearing this simple sundress I got on sale. Seriously, Ember, do not overthink it. If you wear a gown, you are going to look insane. Everyone is going jeans and nice tops. It is about Grandma, not us. Right? I said. About Grandma. Thanks, Cass. Anytime. Love you. She hung up. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. She had looked me in the metaphorical eye and lied without a tremor. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Cassidy, a voice note. I frowned. Had she meant to call me back? I tapped play. The audio was muffled at first, then clear. She must have put her phone down on the table and accidentally hit record, or maybe she was sending a voice note to someone else and clicked my name by mistake in her haste. She actually called me to ask. Cassidy's voice rang out from my car speakers. She was like, "Is it formal?" I almost died laughing. I told her to wear jeans. Can you imagine the look on her face when she walks in and we are all in couture? It is going to be the highlight of the night. Then, my mother's voice. It is for her own good. She needs to understand her place. She thinks because she drives Mother to the doctor she is the matriarch. It is embarrassing. Then, a third voice, a male voice, maybe Uncle Rob. Just make sure she doesn't see the papers before the party. If she knows what we are trying to get Margaret to sign, she will throw a fit. Don't worry, Cassidy said. TCC is too busy shopping at Target to notice we are moving the assets. The recording cut off. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. A moment later, a text popped up from Cassidy. Cassidy. Oops, ignore that. Pocket dial. Don't be dramatic about it. We were just joking around. See you at the party. She didn't even try to unsend it. She didn't care. She thought I was so beaten down, so desperate for their approval, that I would swallow this humiliation like I had swallowed every other insult for the last 7 years. She thought I would listen to that, cry, and still show up in the beige cardigan, hoping they would forgive me for existing. But she had missed the most important part of the recording. The papers, moving the assets. I replayed that 10-second clip. Just make sure she doesn't see the papers. This was not just about a dress. This was not just about making me look poor in front of the town's elite. They were planning something legal. They were planning to have Grandma sign something on the night of the party, probably under the guise of it being a guest book or a birthday card. Or maybe they planned to corner her when she was tired. My grandmother had a substantial estate: the house, the land in the valley, the investment portfolio from my grandfather's construction business. For years, they had been circling it like vultures. Now, it seemed, they were ready to dive. I looked at the text again. Don't be dramatic. Okay, I said to the empty car. I won't be dramatic. I started the engine. I did not go home. I drove to the bank. I withdrew $2,000 from my emergency savings account, money I had been saving for a new transmission for my car. It was dangerous. It was reckless. If my car broke down next week, I would be walking to work, but I did not care. I drove to the high-end district of Cloverbend, the part of town where the boutiques did not have price tags in the window. I walked into L'Etoile, the shop where my mother bought her gala gowns. The sales assistant looked me up and down. I was wearing scrubs and a messy bun. "Can I help you finding the delivery entrance?" she asked. "I am here to buy a dress," I said, my voice steady. "For the Callaway Legacy Night." Her eyebrows shot up. "Oh, we just dressed Mrs. Watson and her daughter for that. They picked lovely pieces." "I am sure they did," I said. "I need something better. I need something that stops the room." I spent 2 hours in that fitting room. I tried on silk, velvet, chiffon. I looked at myself in the mirror, the dark circles under my eyes from working 60-hour weeks, the roughness of my hands from sanitizing them 100 times a day. Then, I put on the emerald green gown. It was structure and fluidity all at once. It hugged my waist and flowed to the floor in a pool of dark, shimmering green. It had a slit up the leg that was daring but elegant. It looked like armor. "That is the one," the assistant said, her earlier judgment replaced by genuine admiration. It looks like it was made for you." "I will take it," I said. "And I need shoes and earrings. Put it all on the card." I walked out of that store with a garment bag that weighed less than a pound but felt like it held the weight of a warhead. I did not text Cassidy back. I did not text my mother. I let them believe their lie had worked. I let them picture me in my beige cardigan, looking pathetic, looking like the charity case. I drove home, hung the dress on the back of my bedroom door, and sat on my bed. I pulled up the voice note again. I saved it to the cloud. I saved it to my external hard drive. I emailed it to the same burner account where I kept the screenshots of the group chat. Moving the assets. I had 6 weeks of evidence from the group chat. And now I had this, but I needed more. If they were trying to get Grandma to sign papers, they needed a notary. They needed legal documents. I remembered something Elliot Price, my grandmother's financial advisor, had told me in passing once when I ran into him at the grocery store. "Your grandmother is sharp, Ember, sharper than your uncle gives her credit for." I needed to talk to Elliot, but I couldn't just walk into his office. My uncle played golf with him. I looked at the dress hanging on the door. The emerald green seemed to glow in the dim light. They wanted a show. They wanted a contrast. They wanted to see who belonged and who didn't. "You want a show?" I whispered. "I will give you a finale." I picked up my phone and opened the calendar. I marked the date of Legacy Night. I set a reminder for 2 hours before the event. Get ready for war. Then, I went to the kitchen and made myself dinner. I ate it standing up, staring at the wall, visualizing the moment I would walk into Cloverbend Hall. I visualized Cassidy's face. I visualized my mother's smile faltering. They had spent 7 years calling me a charity case. They had spent weeks setting a trap to humiliate me. But they forgot one thing. When you have nothing left to lose, you have no reason to be afraid, and a person with no fear is the most dangerous person in the room. I finished my dinner, washed the plate, and went to sleep. For the first time in years, I did not dream of falling. I dreamed of flying. I sat at my kitchen table, the surface cluttered with printed screenshots, a highlighter, and a red pen. The emerald dress was hanging on the back of my bedroom door. A silent sentry, but I was done thinking about fashion. The voice note from Cassidy had been the spark, but the archives of the group chat, the 7 years of history I had downloaded before leaving, were the fuel. I was no longer the hurt daughter or the excluded sister. I was an auditor. I was a forensic accountant of my own trauma. When I first scrolled through the real family-only chat, I had been looking for insults. I had been looking for the emotional blows, the charity case jokes, the mockery of my divorce. But now, with the cold clarity that comes after the tears dry up, I went back in. I was looking for patterns. I was looking for dates. I was looking for the motive. People do not spend 7 years degrading a family member just for sport. There is always a utility to cruelty. I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Subfolder 4, The Inheritance Plotting. I started searching for keywords: sign, bank, house, trust, doctor, pills. The search results populated the screen, and a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty apartment window settled over me. It was not just gossip, it was a conspiracy. I found a conversation from November of last year. It was between my mother, Monica, and my Uncle Rob. Monica. I tried to bring up the power of attorney again today. She shut me down. She said she is perfectly capable of managing her own affairs. Uncle Rob. She is stubborn. You need to catch her at the right time. Don't ask her in the morning when she is fresh. Ask her after she takes the PM medication. She gets foggy around 8:30. Monica. Good point. I will go over Tuesday night with some paperwork for the house maintenance. Slip the POA in the stack. She hates reading fine print anyway. I circled the date on the printout with my red pen. Tuesday night. I pulled up my own calendar from last November, on that specific Tuesday. I had been at the clinic late. I had called Grandma at 7 to check on her, and she had sounded tired, slurring her words slightly. I had assumed it was just fatigue. Now I knew. My mother had been there, hovering over her with a stack of papers, using my grandmother's vulnerability as a tactical advantage. I kept reading. They were obsessed with something called the Grandpa Fund. I knew my grandfather had left money when he died 10 years ago. But the family narrative had always been that it was tied up in complicated trusts or had been used to pay off debts. I never asked about it. I never asked about money. Period. I was too busy trying to prove I wasn't the charity case they claimed I was. But in the chat, the narrative was different. Cassidy. Are we sure TCC doesn't know about the secondary account? Aunt Kendra. How would she? She thinks she is poor because she is bad with money. She has no idea Grandpa left that specifically for the grandchildren. Monica. If she finds out that fund exists, she might try to claim her share. We need to make sure that money is moved into the renovation trust for the estate before the end of the fiscal year. Cassidy. Just tell her the estate is broke. She believes anything. I felt a wave of nausea. The grandchildren. Not Cassidy and her cousins. The grandchildren. That included me. For a decade, I had been working overtime, driving a car with a rattling transmission, and buying my clothes at thrift stores. Believing that I had to struggle because that was just my lot in life, I believed the family had no liquidity to help me. When I borrowed that $300 from Aunt Kendra 5 years ago, she had made me sign a handwritten promissory note and lectured me for 20 minutes about fiscal responsibility. She had lectured me about borrowing $300 while they were actively hiding a fund that likely contained thousands that legally belonged to me. It was brilliant, in a sick, twisted way. The nickname, the charity case, was not just an insult, it was a branding campaign. By constantly referring to me as broke, as a mess, as a financial liability, they discredited me before I could even speak. If I ever stood up and said, "Where is my share?" they could simply point to 7 years of text messages and say, "Look, she is desperate. She is just trying to grab money because she is a failure." They had weaponized my struggles they had watched me endure without lifting a finger, to justify stealing from me. I moved to the next stack of papers, the betting pools. I had looked at them with hurt feelings before. Now, I looked at them with logic. Betting pool. Date Ember asks for a loan. Uncle Rob. I bet 50 she asks before Christmas. Cassidy. I say she asks right after her car inspection fails. I cross-referenced these dates with my bank statements. I looked at the entire 7-year history. Number of times I asked my family for money. 1. That single $300. Number of times they predicted I would ask. 42. The reality did not match their internal narrative. I was not a leech. I was arguably the most financially independent person in the family because I lived entirely within my own means. However meager those means were, I did not have a husband's trust fund like Cassidy. I did not have an inheritance cushion like my mother. I survived on my own sweat, but facts did not matter to them. They needed me to be the failure so they could feel like the successes. Then, I reached the message that had nearly broken me the first time, the one about my infertility. Monica. At least she has no kids, less mess for us to clean up. I forced myself to read it again. I forced myself to look at the timestamp. It was sent 3 hours after I had left her house. Sobbing, I dissected the sentence, less mess for us to clean up. My mother did not see a grandchild. She saw a potential heir. If I had a child, that child would have a claim to the family legacy. That child would be another person they had to split the pie with. By being childless, I became a genetic dead end in their eyes. It made me easier to cut out. It made me easier to erase. I put the paper down. My hands were perfectly steady. I realized then that I had been fighting the wrong battle. I had been fighting for their love. I had been fighting for a seat at the table. But this was not a dinner party. This was a heist. They were stealing my grandmother's agency. They were stealing my grandfather's legacy. And they were stealing my dignity to cover their tracks. I looked at the pile of evidence. It was enough to destroy them. I could have posted it all on Facebook right then. I could have uploaded the screenshots to Instagram, tagged Cassidy's employer, tagged the country club where my mother was on the board, and watched their reputations burn by morning. The internet loves a villain, and my family was casting central for villains. But I stopped myself. Social media is a wildfire, but it burns out fast. People would be outraged for 24 hours. They would leave comments like, toxic family, and go no contact. Then, the next scandal would drop, and everyone would move on. My mother would spin it. She would say, I hacked her account. She would say, the messages were doctored. She would cry crocodile tears and say, I was mentally unstable, playing right back into the charity case narrative. Poor Ember, she would say to her friends at the club. She is having another breakdown. She is making things up. And they would believe her, because she had the clothes, the house, and the history of painting me as the crazy one. No. I needed something undeniable. I needed a stage where they could not delete the comments. I needed a moment where they could not log off. I looked at the date on the calendar. Legacy night, Cloverbend Hall. A room full of the town's elite, business partners, neighbors, the people whose opinions my mother and Cassidy valued more than oxygen. If I exposed them there, in front of a live audience, there would be no spin. There would be no, Ember is crazy. There would only be the silence of a room watching the mask fall. I took a folder, a real physical manila folder, and began to organize the printed screenshots. I created a timeline. Exhibit A, the intent to manipulate Grandma's medication. Exhibit B, the admission of the hidden Grandpa Fund. Exhibit C, the conspiracy to dress code shame me to discredit my appearance. Exhibit D, the charity case smear campaign versus the financial reality. I labeled the folder clearly. Legacy night. I made a promise to myself in that quiet kitchen. I would not scream. I would not throw wine. I would not make a scene. Screaming is what crazy people do. Screaming is what the charity case would do. I would be calm. I would be precise. I would be the surgeon cutting out the rot. But I needed one more thing. The screenshots were powerful, but they were digital. They were words on a screen. To make this stick, to make this legally binding and not just socially ruinous, I needed to know exactly what legal documents they had forced my grandmother to sign. I needed to know if they had succeeded in getting that power of attorney. And for that, I needed a specialist. I needed someone on the inside, or at least someone who knew where the bodies were buried. I thought of Elliot Price again, the financial advisor. He was a stickler for rules. He was the kind of man who wore a tie to the grocery store. If my mother and Uncle Rob were moving money around or pushing dodgy paperwork, Elliot would know. And if Elliot knew, he was likely uncomfortable. My family relied on people being too polite to call them out. They relied on the silence of bystanders. I was done being polite. I closed the laptop. I put the red pen down. I checked the time. It was 2 a.m. I had 6 weeks. Week 1. Analyze the data. Done. Week 2. Secure the witnesses. Week 3. Solidify the plan. Week 4. Prepare the visual evidence. Week 5. The final emotional fortification. Week 6. The execution. I walked over to the window. The city was asleep. Somewhere out there, Cassidy was probably sleeping soundly, dreaming of the applause she would get at the legacy night, dreaming of the speech she would give about family values. "Sleep well, sis," I whispered to the glass. "Because when I am done with you, you won't be able to show your face in a grocery store in this town ever again." I turned off the kitchen light. The darkness didn't scare me anymore. I had the receipts, and for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't just surviving, I was hunting. I did not go to Elliot Price's office in the downtown financial district. That would have been a mistake. My Uncle Rob played golf with the senior partners at that firm, and my mother's name was on a plaque in the lobby because of a donation she made 10 years ago. Walking through those glass doors would have tripped a silent alarm before I even reached the reception desk. Instead, I met him at a small, greasy spoon diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where the menu is laminated and sticky, and the coffee tastes like burnt hazelnuts. It was a place my family would never set foot in, which made it the safest room in the city. Elliot was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth, looking uncomfortably overdressed in his charcoal suit against the red vinyl seats. He was a good man, a man who had managed my grandmother's portfolio with integrity for 2 decades. But he was also a man who disliked conflict. I needed to tread carefully. I slid into the booth opposite him. I did not order anything. "Ember," he said, adjusting his glasses. He looked nervous. "It is good to see you, although, I must admit, your text message was a bit cryptic. You said it was urgent regarding Margaret?" "It is," I said, keeping my voice low. "But not in the way you think. She is physically fine, or as fine as she can be." Elliot relaxed slightly, his shoulders dropping half an inch. "That is a relief. When you work with clients of her age, you always fear the worst phone call." "I am not here to talk about her health, Elliot," I said. "I am here to talk about her protection." I placed my hands on the table, clasping them together to stop a slight tremor. I had to phrase this perfectly. I could not accuse my family of fraud without proof, not to him. He had a fiduciary duty to them as well. I had to speak in the language of hypotheticals. "I have a friend," I began, the oldest lie in the book, but useful. "Her grandmother is in a similar position to mine, wealthy, aging, cognitive days that are good, and days that are bad. This friend is worried that some family members might be pressuring the grandmother to sign documents she does not fully understand." Elliot went very still. He stopped stirring his coffee. The spoon clinked once against the ceramic mug, and then froze. "What kind of documents?" he asked. His voice had lost its casual warmth. It was professional now, guarded. "Power of attorney," I said. "Changes to the estate distribution, access to legacy accounts." When I said power of attorney, Elliot's eyes darted to the left, just for a fraction of a second. It was a micro-expression, a tell. He had heard that term recently. He had heard it in relation to the Calloway estate. "That is a serious concern," Elliot said carefully. "If your friend suspects coercion, that is a legal matter. My friend does not want to start a war she cannot win," I said. "She just wants to know the mechanics. If someone wanted to force a signature, how would they do it? And more importantly, how could it be stopped?" Elliot took a long sip of his coffee. He looked out the window at the gray parking lot. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He knew I wasn't talking about a friend. He knew exactly who I was talking about. And the fact that he didn't stop me, the fact that he didn't tell me I was being paranoid, told me everything I needed to know. In my experience, Elliot said, choosing his words with agonizing precision, undue influence often happens in private. It happens when the elder is tired. Late at night, the perpetrators will frame the document as something routine, a tax form, a maintenance authorization. I nodded. That matched the group chat logs perfectly. Tuesday night, after her meds. However, Elliot continued, leaning in slightly, a signature on a significant document, like a will amendment or a power of attorney, requires notarization to be actionable. A notary must witness the signing. But notaries can be bought, I said. Or they can be friends of the family. Unethical ones, perhaps, Elliot conceded. But if there is a dispute, the validity of that signature hinges on the state of mind of the signatory at that exact moment. If I were your friend, I would advise her to ensure that any future signings happen in the presence of a neutral third party, someone with no stake in the outcome, someone who records the session. A neutral witness, I repeated. Exactly, Elliot said. An ember? Yes. If your friend believes that documents have already been signed under duress, she should know that a new document, executed properly and more recently, revokes the previous ones. The last word is the only word that matters. He looked me dead in the eye. The last word, I whispered. I have to go, Elliot said, checking his watch abruptly. I have a meeting at 2. Please give Margaret my best. Tell her I'm looking forward to the legacy night. I hear she has a speech prepared. She does, I said. Elliot slid a $20 bill onto the table for his coffee, which cost $3, and walked out without looking back. I sat there for 10 minutes, processing. The last word is the only word that matters. Elliot knew something. He knew they had tried, or were trying, to get her to sign, but he had just given me the key to the lock. I didn't need to just prove they were frauds. I needed to ensure Grandma had the final say. Legally and publicly, I left the diner and drove straight to a print shop. I did not use my home printer. I did not want a digital footprint on my own Wi-Fi network that Cassidy's tech-savvy husband could potentially trace if he decided to snoop. I printed everything, the timeline I had created, the screenshots of the betting pool, the conversation about the medication, the voice note transcript. I stood by the industrial copier, watching the pages slide out, warm and sharp. It was a dossier of betrayal. I organized the papers into 3 identical binders. One set went into a waterproof lockbox in the trunk of my car, buried under a pile of emergency blankets and jumper cables. One set I kept in my tote bag. The third set I took to the post office. I shoved it into a large envelope and mailed it to my best friend, Sarah, who lived 3 states away in Colorado. I texted her a single message. Package coming. Do not open it unless I tell you to, or unless I go missing. Sarah, you are scaring me. M, what is going on? Me, just insurance. Love you. I did not want to scare her, but I needed an off-site backup. If my apartment was broken into, if my car was stolen, the truth had to survive. When I finally returned to my apartment, the sun was setting. The red light on my router was blinking steady and calm, but the atmosphere in my living room felt charged. I sat on the couch and finally turned my phone back on. I had kept it in airplane mode since the initial explosion of messages the night I left the group chat. I had needed the silence to think, to plan. Now, I was ready to see the damage. The phone vibrated against my palm for a solid 2 minutes as the notifications cascaded in. 74 text messages, 12 missed calls, 5 voicemails. I watched the names scroll by. Mom, Cassidy, Uncle Rob, Aunt Kendra. The tone of the messages had shifted. The first wave, immediately after I left the group, had been panic and anger. How dare you? Pick up the phone. You are overreacting. But the messages from today, they were different. They were cloying. They were desperate. Mom, 10:30 in the morning. Ember, honey, please call me. We are all so worried about you. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. You know how our family humor is. It is just banter. Aunt Kendra, noon. I made that pot roast you like. Come over for dinner. We can talk. Cassidy, 2:15 in the afternoon. I am so sorry. Really? I feel terrible. I didn't realize you took it seriously. I love you. I scrolled through them, feeling a detached sense of cold amusement. Family humor, banter. Calling someone a charity case for 7 years isn't banter. Betting on their divorce isn't humor. It is abuse. Then, the doorbell rang. I jumped. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was a delivery driver. He was holding a basket the size of a laundry hamper. I opened the door. Sign here, please, he said. Bored. I signed. I dragged the basket into my living room. It was wrapped in cellophane and tied with a massive gold ribbon. It was filled with expensive things. Truffles, a bottle of Dom Perignon, high-end bath salts, a cashmere throw blanket. There was a card tucked into the ribbon. To our dearest Ember, we love you. Let's start fresh. Mom and Cassidy. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound in the empty apartment. They were trying to buy me off with bath salts. They thought my dignity cost less than $500. My phone buzzed again. A new message from Cassidy. Cassidy, did you get the basket? Hope you like it. Also, listen, I was talking to Brad about you. He thinks there is an opening at his firm for a project coordinator. Starting salary is $80,000. He wants to meet you. We want to help you get back on your feet. Let us help you reset your life. I stared at the screen. Reset your life. That was the tell. If they truly thought they had done nothing wrong, if they truly thought I was just being dramatic, they would be rolling their eyes and ignoring me. They would be waiting for me to come crawling back. But they were not ignoring me. They were love-bombing me. They were offering me jobs. They were sending champagne. You do not bribe someone you think is crazy. You bribe someone you are afraid of. They were terrified. They knew what I had seen. They knew about the Grandpa Fund messages. They knew about the power of attorney discussions. They knew that if I showed those messages to Grandma, or to a lawyer, their house of cards would collapse. They were trying to pull me back into the fold, to make me complicit, to put me on the payroll so I would owe them. If I took the job with Brad, I would be under their thumb again. If I drank the champagne, I would be accepting their apology. I looked at the basket. It looked like a bribe. It smelled like fear. I did not reply. I did not text, thank you. I did not text, go to hell. Silence is a weapon, and right now, my silence was louder than any scream. Let them sweat. Let them wonder if I was going to take the deal. Let them wonder if I was talking to a lawyer. I picked up the bottle of Dom Perignon. It was heavy. Cold glass. I walked to the kitchen and placed it in the back of my fridge. I would not drink it tonight. I will save this, I said to the empty room. I will pop this bottle on the night of the legacy dinner, after the truth is out. I went back to the living room and looked at the pile of evidence binders. Ember, the victim, was dead. Ember, the charity case, was gone. The woman standing in this apartment was a strategist. I typed a single note into my phone. Not to send, but to remember. If they were innocent, they would not be panicking. They had just confirmed everything, and in doing so, they had given me the confidence to do what came next. The doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't jump. I walked to the door slowly. I checked the peephole. It wasn't a delivery driver this time. It was Cassidy. She was standing on my welcome mat, wearing oversized sunglasses even though it was dusk, checking her reflection in her phone screen. She looked perfect. She looked anxious. I didn't open the door immediately. I watched her. I watched her shift her weight from foot to foot. I watched her practice a smile, adjusting the corners of her mouth until it looked sincere. It was a performance. I unlocked the deadbolt. The click echoed like a gunshot. I opened the door. "Hi, Cass," I said. The game was on. Cassidy stood in the hallway, framed by the peeling beige paint of my apartment complex corridor. It was a stark contrast to the manicured world she usually inhabited. She was wearing a trench coat that probably cost more than my first car, belted tightly at the waist. Her hair was blown out to perfection, not a strand out of place, catching the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway. But it was her face that drew my attention. She had done her makeup with strategic precision. Her eyeliner was slightly smudged on the bottom lid, just enough to suggest she had been crying, but not enough to look messy. Her eyes were rimmed with a faint, carefully applied redness. It was the face of a martyr. It was the face of someone who wanted to be hugged. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her voice was small, tremulous. It was a voice I had heard 1,000 times before when she wanted to borrow a dress she would never return or needed me to cover for her with Mom. I did not step back. I kept one hand on the doorknob and the other resting on the doorframe, creating a physical barrier. "No," I said. "You can say what you need to say from there." Cassidy blinked. The rejection hit her like a physical slap. She was not used to boundaries. In her world, if she showed up looking sad, the seas parted. "Ember, please," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "I drove all the way across town. I am shaking. I just want to talk to my sister." "You have been talking to your sister for 7 years," I said. "I just wasn't in the chat to hear it. Now I am listening. Go ahead." She flinched. She looked down at her designer boots, then back up at me, her eyes widening in a plea for sympathy. "I know it looks bad," she said, the words rushing out. "I know, but you have to understand the context. It is Aunt Kendra. You know how she is. She starts these threads, and she gets so toxic, and Mom and we just go along with it to keep the peace. We didn't mean half the things we said. It is just venting. It is how we cope with stress." I watched her face. It was a masterclass in deflection. In 3 sentences, she had shifted the blame to Aunt Kendra and reframed their cruelty as a coping mechanism. "So," I said, my voice flat, "when you bet $50 that my husband would leave me before our 2nd anniversary, that was you coping with stress?" Cassidy froze. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She had not expected me to quote the specifics. She thought I had just seen the insults, not the ledger. "That," she stammered, "that was just a figure of speech. It wasn't real. I saw the Venmo receipt." "Cassidy," I said, "you titled the transaction TCC Single Again. You added a champagne bottle emoji." The color drained from her face, leaving her foundation looking like a mask. The sad little sister act evaporated. Her posture straightened. The calculated vulnerability was replaced by a flash of annoyance. "Okay," she said, her voice hardening. "Fine. We were mean. We were bitchy. Are you happy? Is that what you want to hear? I am sorry. I am genuinely sorry. But Ember, you cannot blow this up. You cannot show those messages to anyone else." "Why not?" I asked. "If it was just banter, surely everyone will get the joke." "Because of Grandma," she hissed. She took a step closer, invading my personal space. I smelled her expensive perfume, something floral and cloying. "Think about her, Ember. She is 82 years old. She has a heart condition. If you show her that chat, if you show her what her daughter and granddaughter said, it will kill her, literally. The shock could cause a stroke." I stared at her. It was the ultimate trump card. They were using the woman they were planning to rob as a human shield. "Do not do that," I said. My voice dropped an octave. It was not loud, but it was dangerous. "Do not use her health to protect your reputation." "I am protecting her life," Cassidy argued, her voice rising. "You think you are being righteous, but you are being selfish. If you drop this bomb on Legacy Night, you are not destroying us. You are destroying her last good year. Do you want her to die thinking her family is broken? Do you want her last memory to be a war?" For a second, I hesitated. It was a powerful argument. It was the one thing that kept me up at night. Would the truth hurt Margaret Calloway more than the lie? But then I remembered the text messages. I remembered them discussing how to trick her into signing the power of attorney after her evening medication. That was not protecting her. That was abusing her. She is stronger than you think, I said, and she deserves to know who is sitting at her table. You are not worried about her heart. Cassidy, you are worried about her checkbook. Cassidy's face twisted. The mask fell completely. There was no sadness left. Only a sharp, ugly sneer. You think this is about money? She scoffed. God, you are so pathetic. It is always about money with you because you don't have any. This isn't about the estate. It is about the fact that you can't stand that we are a unit, and you are on the outside. I am on the outside because you pushed me there, I said. You are on the outside because you are depressing, Cassidy shouted. You walk into a room and the energy dies. You are always so somber, so holier than thou with your nursing scrubs and your tired eyes. You act like you are the only one who cares about Grandma, just because you change her light bulbs. I listen to her, I said. I don't just use her for Instagram content. I love her, Cassidy screamed. But I have a life. I have a career. I can't sit there for 4 hours listening to the same story about Grandpa's construction business from 1970. You do it because you have nothing else. You have no husband. You have no kids. You have nothing but her. The words hung in the hallway, echoing off the concrete floor. It was the truth, or at least, it was her version of it. She truly believed that my devotion was a symptom of my emptiness. I do it, I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm, because I don't want her to be alone with people who count the minutes until she dies. Cassidy flinched as if I had struck her. Her eyes narrowed into slits. You think you are the favorite, she spat. You think because she calls you to fix the sink that she loves you more. But you are wrong. You are the help. Ember. That is all you are to her. Useful, reliable, but I am the one she shows off. I am the one she talks about at the club. I am the shinier version. Is that why you need to trick her into signing papers? I asked. The question was a precision strike. Cassidy stopped breathing for a second. Her eyes darted to the side. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied. I think you do, I said. I know about the power of attorney. I know about the Grandpa Fund. I know you and Mom are trying to consolidate the assets before the will is read. Cassidy laughed. It was a brittle, nervous sound. You are delusional, she said. You have been watching too many movies. There is no conspiracy. We are just handling the estate management because Grandma is getting confused. We are helping her by hiding assets. We are protecting the assets, Cassidy snapped, from people like you, people who would drain the accounts to pay off their debts and live in mediocrity. She took a breath, smoothing down the front of her trench coat. She regained her composure, a smug smile playing on her lips. And honestly, Ember, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, it doesn't matter what you think you know. It doesn't matter what screenshots you have. You are too late. I went very still. What do you mean? Cassidy checked her nails. She looked bored now. The performance was over. The paperwork, she said. It is already in motion. Mom went over there last night. The notary was there. The papers are signed, or, at least, the important ones are. By the time you try to make your little speech at Legacy Night, the assets will already be transferred into the trust. You can scream all you want. You can show your little text messages. But legally, you will be screaming at a brick wall. She looked at me with genuine pity. You should have taken the job offer. Ember, you should have taken the basket. Because now, you are going to get nothing. Absolutely nothing. My heart hammered against my ribs. But I did not let it show on my face. Mom went over there last night. The notary was there. If that was true, then everything I had planned was in jeopardy. If they had successfully coerced a signature, the legal battle would be 10 times harder. But then I remembered Elliot Price's words in the diner. The last word is the only word that matters. And I remembered Grandma's voice on the phone. I have been taking notes. Cassidy thought she had played the ace. She thought she had crushed me. Are you done? I asked. Cassidy blinked. She had expected me to crumble. She had expected me to beg. Yes, she said. I am done. I just wanted to warn you. For your own sake, don't embarrass yourself on Saturday. Just stay home. I will see you at Cloverbend Hall. Cassidy, I said. You are making a mistake, she said, shaking her head. A massive mistake. Maybe, I said. Drive safe. I stepped back and began to close the door. Cassidy reached out, as if to stop it, but then pulled her hand back. She looked at me one last time, and for a split second, I saw fear again. She had thrown her biggest punches, the guilt, the jealousy, the legal threat, and I was still standing. That terrified her more than anything. Goodbye, TCC, she muttered. I shut the door. I threw the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. My legs felt weak. The adrenaline was starting to crash. The papers are signed. That sentence rattled in my brain. I walked to the window and watched Cassidy exit the building. I watched her get into her convertible. I watched her sit there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, before she pulled out her phone and made a call, probably to Mom, probably to say, it didn't work. She knows. I turned away from the window. If they had forced a signature last night, then the timeline had accelerated. They thought they had won. They thought the ink was dry. But they didn't know about the legacy night speech. They didn't know that Grandma had told me to stay until the end. And they didn't know that a signature obtained through coercion, when there is evidence of a conspiracy, is not a victory, it is a felony. Cassidy had just given me the final piece of the puzzle. She confirmed the act. She confirmed the timing. I looked at the emerald dress. It is not too late, I whispered to the empty room. It is just beginning. I went to my desk. I opened the binder. I turned to the page labeled The Notary. I needed to find out who had been at the house last night. I needed a name. Legacy night was in 4 days. It was going to be a bloodbath. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who was going to bleed. The gravel driveway of Cloverbend Hall crunched beneath the tires of my 10-year-old sedan as I pulled up to the valet stand. It was a sound that usually made me cringe, a reminder of the maintenance I could not afford. But tonight it sounded like a drum roll. Cloverbend Hall was not just a venue, it was a monument to old money. The building was a sprawling limestone estate that had been converted into the city's premier event space, flanked by manicured hedges and illuminated by floodlights that turned the night into a theatrical stage. Through the massive French windows, I could see the golden glow of crystal chandeliers and the silhouettes of people moving like sharks in a tank. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. The woman staring back at me was not the charity case. She was not the girl who cried in her car after family dinners. Her hair was swept up in a severe, elegant twist. Her lips were painted a deep crimson, and the dress, the emerald green silk I had spent my emergency savings on, sat against my skin like a second layer of confidence. I handed my keys to the valet. He looked at the car, then at me, and his expression shifted from dismissal to respect. "Have a good evening, ma'am," he said. "I intend to," I replied. I walked up the stone steps. The double doors were open, and the sound of a string quartet drifted out, mixing with the low hum of expensive conversation. Inside, the hall was transformed. My grandmother's legacy night had been curated with the precision of a political campaign launch. There were white lilies everywhere, Grandma's favorite flower, but arranged in tall, imposing vases that felt cold and sterile. A massive easel stood near the entrance, displaying a blown-up black-and-white photograph of Grandma from the 1970s, looking fierce and young, standing in front of her first office building. Below the photo, in elegant gold script, it read, "Margaret Calloway, a life of vision and virtue." I scanned the room. There were at least 100 people here. The mayor was holding a champagne flute near the bar. 2 members of the city council were laughing at a joke told by my Uncle Rob. And there, in the center of the room, holding court like royalty, were my mother and Cassidy, They looked immaculate. Monica was wearing the gold sequined gown she had mentioned in the group chat, a dress that screamed for attention. Cassidy was in a pale pink chiffon number that made her look innocent, youthful, and sweet. They were flanked by a videographer, a man with a heavy camera on a stabilizer rig who was circling them, capturing their candid laughter. I took a deep breath. I smoothed the silk at my hip. I stepped into the light. The effect was instantaneous. It rippled through the room. First, the people near the door stopped talking. Then, the silence spread inward. Monica turned. She was holding a glass of white wine, her head thrown back in a laugh that died in her throat the moment she saw me. She blinked. Once, twice, she looked at my dress, then she looked at Cassidy, then back at me. The shock on her face was so raw, so unguarded, that for a split second, I saw the panic beneath the Botox. She had expected the beige cardigan. She had expected the khakis. She had expected the visual punchline to her cruel joke. Instead, she got a rival. I walked toward them. The emerald green of my dress cut through the sea of black tuxedos and pastel gowns like a blade. I did not shrink. I did not hunch my shoulders. I walked with the rhythm of the string quartet. "Mother," I said when I reached them. "Cassidy, you both look lovely." Cassidy's mouth was slightly open. She recovered faster than Mom, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure venom before she plastered on a tight plastic smile. "Ember," Cassidy said, her voice pitched high enough for the videographer to hear. You dressed up. It is a celebration," I said, my voice smooth. "I wouldn't want to underdress for Grandma." "We thought you were going for something more comfortable," Monica said, her voice tight. She stepped forward, effectively blocking me from the videographer's line of sight. "But this is certainly a choice. Is it a rental?" "No," I said. "It is mine." "Well," Monica said, linking her arm through mine and steering me forcefully away from the center of the room. Her grip was like a vice. "Let's not make a scene. You are here. That is what matters. Grab a drink. Mingle. But try to stay out of the main thoroughfare. Honey, the waiters are rushing back and forth with hot food, and I don't want you to get spilled on." It was subtle. It was masterful. "Get out of the way. You are a liability." I let her guide me to the edge of the room, near a decorative pillar. "Stay here," she hissed, dropping the smile. "And for God's sake, don't talk about your job. These people don't want to hear about bedpans and emergency rooms while they are eating canapes. I will be on my best behavior," I promised. She glared at me one last time, suspecting something but unable to name it, before turning back to the party, her smile snapping back into place like a switch. I stood by the pillar, watching them work the room. They were efficient. They greeted every guest by name, accepting compliments about Grandma's health, nodding solemnly when people spoke about the burden of caregiving. A few minutes later, the photographer, a different man from the videographer, called out, "Family photo. Can we get the immediate family under the archway, please?" Monica waved everyone over. Uncle Rob, Aunt Kendra, Cassidy, Cassidy's husband Brad. They formed a tight semicircle. I walked over to join them. I was immediate family. I was a granddaughter. As I approached, Monica stepped sideways. She placed herself between me and the center of the group. "Ember, honey," she said loud enough for the photographer to hear. "Why don't you stand on the end? Over there. The lighting is a bit better for your complexion on that side." She pointed to the far left, almost into the shadows of a large potted fern. "Actually," the photographer said, adjusting his lens, "if she stands there, she will be out of the frame. Can you squeeze in next to the blonde lady?" He pointed to Cassidy. Cassidy stiffened. "It is really tight in the center," she said. "My dress has a lot of volume. I don't want it to get crushed. Ember is fine on the end. You can just use the wide-angle lens, right?" The photographer looked confused, but he shrugged. "Sure, whatever you want." I stood on the far edge, separated from Cassidy by a distinct 2-foot gap. I felt the heat of humiliation rise in my neck, but I pushed it down. This was the photo they wanted, the wealthy, successful core, and the stray they had to feed. Click, click, click. Got it, the photographer said. Beautiful family. As the group broke up, a man in a tuxedo approached us. I recognized him. It was Mr. Henderson, a major donor to the hospital where I worked, though he likely never saw me in the lower wards. "Monica," he boomed. "Wonderful evening. And who is this?" He turned to me, his eyes appreciative of the green dress. "I don't think we have been introduced." I opened my mouth to introduce myself. "This is Ember," Cassidy interjected, stepping in front of me again. She rested a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that looked affectionate but felt heavy. She helps out with things, running errands for Grandma, picking up prescriptions. She's been so helpful with the little logistical details. She didn't say sister. She didn't say granddaughter. She made me sound like a paid assistant, a hireling. "Mister?" Henderson nodded, his interest waning instantly. Good help is hard to find. Wonderful that you have someone reliable." He turned his back to me to continue talking to Monica about interest rates. My hands curled into fists at my sides. The urge to speak was physical. I wanted to say, "I am a registered nurse. I run the trauma triage. I am the reason your mother didn't wait 6 hours in the ER last month." But I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. No drama. I told myself, not yet. Let them dig the hole. If I snapped now, if I corrected them, I would look petty. I would be the jealous sister causing a scene at a nice party. I needed to be invisible until I became undeniable. I excused myself and walked toward the bar. "Ember." The voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the room like a bell. I turned. Grandma Margaret was sitting in a high-backed velvet armchair near the fireplace. She looked small in the massive chair, but her eyes were sharp, bright blue and alert. She was wearing a navy blue gown, and her silver hair was coiffed into a perfect halo. I walked over and knelt beside her chair so I was at eye level. "Hi, Grandma," I said softly. "You look beautiful." She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was cool and dry. She looked at my dress, and a slow, genuine smile spread across her face. "Green," she whispered. "I always loved you in green. It brings out the fight in your eyes." "I thought it was appropriate," I said. She squeezed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She leaned in close, pulling me toward her so that our foreheads almost touched. The smell of her lavender soap filled my nose. "They are parading around like peacocks," she murmured, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "Look at them, counting the silverware." I looked over my shoulder. Monica was inspecting the buffet table. Cassidy was showing her diamond ring to a group of women. "They are just happy to celebrate you," I lied, though I knew she didn't believe it. Grandma scoffed. "They are celebrating the inheritance, not the woman, but they forgot one thing." "What is that?" "That the woman is not dead yet," she said. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Ember." "Yes?" "Do not leave," she commanded. "I saw Monica try to push you to the shadows. I saw Cassidy cut you off. Do not let them push you out the door. When the speeches start, I want you standing right there." She pointed to a spot directly in front of the podium. "Can you do that for me?" "I can," I said. "Good," she said, "because I am tired of the fiction. Tonight, we read the nonfiction." She released my hand and sat back, composing herself as a waiter approached with a tray of sparkling water. I stood up. My heart was pounding a rhythm against my ribs that felt like a war drum. She knew. She absolutely knew. And she was not just a participant in my plan. She was the architect of her own. A sudden chime rang out through the hall, a spoon tapping against a glass. The room quieted down. The string quartet faded into silence. The MC, a slick man with a radio voice, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family," he announced, "welcome to this night of legacy and love. To kick off our tributes to the wonderful Margaret Calloway, please welcome her granddaughter, Cassidy Watson." Applause rippled through the room. Polite, Enthusiastic applause. Cassidy glided to the stage. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the crowd with wet, shining eyes. She looked angelic. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "Wow, it is so overwhelming to see all of you here to honor my Gigi." She looked over at Grandma. Blowing her a kiss, Grandma stared back, her face unreadable. "You know," Cassidy continued, "people always ask me how I do it, how I balance my career, my marriage, and taking care of my grandmother, and I always tell them, it is not a burden, it is a privilege." I felt the bile rise in my throat. Taking care of her? Cassidy hadn't spent a night at Grandma's house in 4 years. Cassidy paid a cleaning service to go over once a month and build it to the estate. "There have been so many nights," Cassidy said, wiping a tear, "where I sat by her bed, holding her hand, just listening to her stories about this town, stories about Grandpa. And in those quiet moments, I realized that family is not just about blood. It is about showing up. It is about being there when it is hard, not just when it is easy." The room swayed with sympathy. I saw women dabbing their eyes. I saw Mr. Henderson nodding approvingly. "My sister Ember is here somewhere," Cassidy said, gesturing vaguely to the back of the room. Nowhere near where I was standing. "And we all love her, of course, but I think tonight is really about the people who have carried the torch, the people who have made the sacrifices to keep this legacy alive." She paused for effect. "Gigi," she said, turning to Grandma, "I promise you, as long as I am here, your legacy is safe. I will protect this family. I will protect this house. I will protect everything you built." The applause was thunderous. Cassidy beamed, soaking it in like sunlight. She stepped back from the mic, looking humble, looking triumphant. I stood frozen. The audacity was breathtaking. She was rewriting history in real time. She was claiming my hours, my labor, my love, and packaging it as her own to sell to the highest bidder. But as I watched her walk off the stage, hugging Monica, high-fiving Uncle Rob, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was the calm of a poker player who knows the person across the table has just gone all in on a bluff. She had just staked her entire reputation on a lie. She had just stood in front of the most important people in Cloverbend and claimed to be the guardian of the Calloway legacy. She had built the pedestal so high that when she fell, the impact would be catastrophic. I looked at Grandma. She wasn't clapping. She was looking at me. She gave a microscopic nod. The MC returned to the mic. "Thank you, Cassidy," touching words. "And now, we have a very special moment. Margaret herself has asked to say a few words." The room went silent. Grandma stood up. She waved away the waiter who tried to offer her an arm. She walked to the podium slowly, but steadily. She gripped the sides of the lectern. She looked out at the sea of faces. She looked at Monica, who was beaming with pride, expecting a public thank you for the party. She looked at Cassidy, who was waiting to be crowned the heir apparent. Then, she looked at me. "Legacy," Grandma said into the microphone. Her voice was not weak. It was gravel and iron. "It is a heavy word. My granddaughter Cassidy just spoke about truth, about showing up, about sacrifice." She paused. The silence was thick enough to choke on. "It was a beautiful speech," Grandma said. "But there was only one problem with it." She reached under the podium and pulled out a thick leather-bound folder. It was a lie. The air left the room. The videographer zoomed in. I took a step forward. The show was about to begin. The silence that followed my grandmother's declaration was not the kind of silence you hear in a library. It was the vacuum of space. It was the sound of oxygen being sucked out of the room by the sheer weight of 3 words. It was a lie. The videographer, to his credit, did not stop recording. He simply widened his stance, sensing that the genre of the evening had just shifted from a Hallmark tribute to a true crime documentary. Cassidy, who had been halfway to her seat, froze. She turned around slowly, her face a mask of polite confusion. the kind a toddler wears when they are caught with their hand in the cookie jar, but think they can still smile their way out of it. "Grandma?" She laughed, a nervous, trilling sound. "Oh, Gigi, you are confused. It is the medication. The excitement is too much." "I am not confused. Cassidy," Grandma said. Her voice did not shake. It boomed through the speakers, magnified by the high-tech sound system my mother had rented to ensure everyone heard her own praises. "And I am not Gigi. I am your grandmother, a woman you have not visited on a Tuesday in 4 years." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Mr." Henderson lowered his wine glass. The mayor leaned forward. Grandma looked past the blinding spotlights, past the frozen smiles of my mother and aunt, and locked eyes with me. "Ember," she called out. "Come here." It was not a request. It was a summons. I stepped away from the pillar. I felt the gaze of every person in Cloverbend Hall slide toward me. The emerald green dress swished around my legs as I walked the length of the room. I did not look at Monica. I did not look at Cassidy. I looked only at the woman standing at the podium. When I reached the stage, I started to stand next to the lectern, but Grandma shook her head. She reached out her hand, the hand with the arthritis, the hand I had massaged 1,000 times with peppermint cream, and pulled me up to stand directly beside her. She laced her fingers through mine and squeezed. It was a grip of iron. "This," Grandma said, lifting our joined hands for the room to see. "This is what showing up looks like. It does not look like a staged photo op. It looks like the person who is there when the cameras are off." She released my hand only to open the leather-bound folder she had placed on the podium. It was thick, stuffed with papers, receipts, and handwritten notes. "My granddaughter Cassidy just told you a beautiful story about sitting by my bedside," Grandma said, flipping open the first page. "She told you about the sacrifices she made. I have a different story." She looked down at the page, adjusted her reading glasses, and began to read. "November 14th, 3 years ago, I was admitted to Northbridge General for pneumonia. I was there for 6 days. According to my visitor log, which the nurses kindly kept for me, Ember Watson was there for 42 hours total. She slept in the chair. She fed me ice chips." Grandma looked up, her eyes finding Cassidy in the front row. "Cassidy Watson," Grandma read, "0 hours, status, in Aspen." Instagram caption posted that week, "Praying for my Gigi. So hard to be away." The room gasped. It was a collective, sharp intake of breath. Cassidy's face went white. She looked at her husband, Brad, who was suddenly very interested in his shoes. "May 2nd of this year," Grandma continued. Turning the page, the sound of the paper turning was amplified by the microphone, a dry, scratching noise. "My heater broke. It was 10 degrees outside. I called Monica." She looked at my mother. Monica was gripping her wine glass so hard I thought the stem would snap. "Monica told me to call a repairman and hung up because she was at a tasting for this very party," Grandma said. "Ember came over. She brought space heaters. She stayed until 3 in the morning waiting for the emergency service. She made me tea. She put extra blankets on my bed." "Mother, please," Monica interrupted. Her voice was shrill, cutting through the tension. She took a step toward the stage, her sequined dress shimmering aggressively. "This is not the time. You are tired. You are bringing up private grievances in a public forum. Let's go sit down and have some cake." "Private?" Grandma snapped. She did not yell. She just projected her voice with the authority of a woman who had built a business empire when men still thought women belonged in the kitchen. "You made this public, Monica," Grandma said. "You rented the hall. You hired the videographer. You invited the mayor. You wanted a show? You wanted to display the Calloway legacy? Well, here it is." She pointed to the ledger. "This book contains every appointment, every emergency, every holiday for the last 10 years, Grandma said. "It records who drove me, who cooked, who sat with me when the silence was too loud." She turned another page. "And it also records the financial transactions." The atmosphere in the room shifted from embarrassment to danger. The air grew heavy. "I have heard the whispers," Grandma said. addressing the room at large. I know what people say, that Ember is the charity case, that she is the one who needs help, that she is the failure of the family. She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Ember has never asked me for a dime, Grandma said. Not once, but let's look at the others. Grandma, stop, Cassidy shouted. She was standing up now, her hands clenched into fists. You are humiliating us. I am balancing the books, Grandma shot back. January 10th, Cassidy asks for $5,000 for a business venture. The venture was a handbag. Laughter rippled through the back of the room. Nervous, shocked laughter. March 3rd, Monica charges the estate account for maintenance repairs on the main house. $12,000. The repairs were never done, but Monica did come home with a new Cartier bracelet that week. Monica's face was now a mask of pure terror. She looked around the room, trying to make eye contact with her friends, her allies, but they were all looking away. They were looking at their phones. They were looking at the floor. No one wanted to be associated with the sinking ship. You called Ember a charity case, Grandma said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream. But you are the ones who have been bleeding me dry. You are the ones who view my bank account as your personal ATM. And you hated Ember not because she was poor, but because she was the only one I could trust not to steal the silver. I stood there, feeling the blood rush in my ears. I had known about the cruelty. I had known about the insults. But I had not known that Grandma had been tracking the money. I had not known she was watching the theft in real time. But that is not the worst part, Grandma said. She closed the ledger. She placed her hands on either side of the podium and leaned forward. The worst part is that you thought I was stupid. She reached into the inner pocket of her jacket and pulled out a cell phone. It was an old model, clunky and black, but it was functional. I may be 82, she said, but I know how to use technology, and I know about the group chat. If the room had been quiet before, it was now a tomb. Monica stopped breathing. Cassidy looked like she was about to faint. Real family only, Grandma said, pronouncing the name of the group with deliberate, biting sarcasm. That is what you called it, isn't it? A place to mock Ember, a place to bet on her misery, a place to plan how to circumvent my will. That is private communication, Cassidy shrieked. She was frantic now, her poise completely gone. You have no right. That is illegal. That is an invasion of privacy. Privacy? Grandma asked. She looked at Cassidy with an expression that was almost pitying. You forfeited your right to privacy when you plotted to strip a vulnerable old woman of her agency. She looked out at the audience. They bet on when Ember would get divorced, Grandma told the crowd. They bet on when she would lose her job. They called her the charity case while spending my money to buy the clothes on their backs. She turned to me. Her eyes were wet, but her chin was high. I am sorry I did not stop it sooner. Ember, she said. I wanted to see how far they would go. I wanted to see if there was any redemption left in them. But tonight, listening to that speech, I realized the rot goes all the way to the bone. This is insane, Monica hissed to Uncle Rob. Get her off the stage. She is having a mental episode. Miles! Where is Miles? Get the doctor. At the mention of the name, Grandma smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. Ah, yes, she said. Miles. She looked toward the back of the room, near the shadows where the catering staff was huddled. You don't need a doctor, Monica, Grandma said, and you certainly don't need to look for Miles. He is right there. She raised a hand and pointed to a table in the far corner. A man stood up. He was not a doctor. He was not a waiter. He was a man in a gray suit, unassuming, blending into the background until this very moment. He held a briefcase in his hand. It was Miles Voss, the notary. The same notary Cassidy had claimed was at the house last night. The same notary who was supposed to have sealed my fate. Monica saw him and let out a breath of relief. Miles, tell them she signed the papers. Tell them she is confused. Miles Voss did not look at Monica. He walked toward the stage, his steps echoing on the hardwood floor. He walked past the frozen videographer. He walked past the stunned mayor. He walked up the stairs and stood on the other side of Grandma. He placed his briefcase on the podium next to the ledger. "He is not here to help you, Monica," Grandma said softly. "Mr. Voss," Grandma said, "would you please introduce yourself to the room and tell them why you are really here tonight?" Miles Voss adjusted his tie. He looked at the audience, then he looked directly at Cassidy. "My name is Miles Voss," he said. His voice was calm, professional. "I am a licensed notary public for the state, and I am here because last night I was asked to commit a crime." The color that had been draining from Cassidy's face for the last 10 minutes finally vanished completely. She slumped against her husband, her legs giving out. Monica stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "A crime?" someone in the audience whispered. "The truth?" Grandma said into the microphone, her voice ringing out like a gavel striking wood. "The truth does not belong to the wicked, and tonight the wicked have run out of places to hide." She stepped back, giving the floor to Miles. And for the first time in 7 years, I looked at my mother and saw something I never thought I would see. She was not looking at me with pity. She was not looking at me with disdain. She was looking at me with fear, because she knew, just as I did, that whatever Miles Voss was about to say, it wasn't just going to ruin the party, it was going to end her world. The man standing at the podium, Miles Voss, looked entirely unremarkable. He was the kind of man you would pass in a grocery store aisle and forget 3 seconds later. He wore a gray suit that was slightly too large for his shoulders, and his hairline was receding in a way that suggested he worried a lot. But in that moment, under the crystal chandeliers of Cloverbend Hall, he looked like the most dangerous person on earth. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and looked down at a small notepad he had pulled from his breast pocket. He did not look at my mother, who was currently gripping the edge of a table as if she were standing on the deck of the Titanic. He did not look at Cassidy, who was hyperventilating into her husband's shoulder. He looked only at the audience. "Good evening," Miles said. His voice was dry, devoid of any theatrical flair, which made his words land with even more devastating impact. "As Mrs. Calloway mentioned, I am a notary public. I have served this county for 22 years. My job is usually quite boring. I verify identities, I witness signatures, I ensure that the person signing a document is doing so of their own free will and with a sound mind." He paused. He flipped a page in his notepad. "On Tuesday evening," Miles continued, "I received a call from Mrs. Monica Watson. She requested my services for an urgent matter. She stated that her mother, Mrs. Calloway, needed to sign some routine maintenance authorizations for her estate before the fiscal quarter ended. She offered to pay triple my usual rate if I could come over immediately, specifically after 8 o'clock at night." I watched my mother. Her face had gone from terrified to a strange, gray color. She was shaking her head slightly, a microscopic no that she couldn't stop. "When I arrived at the residence," Miles said, "the atmosphere was tense. Mrs. Calloway was in her sitting room. She appeared drowsy. She was wearing her nightgown. Mrs. Watson and her sister, Mrs. Kendra Miller, were present. They were flanking her chair." A collective gasp rippled through the room. The image was clear. 2 predators circling prey. "Mrs. Watson presented a stack of documents," Miles said. She told Mrs. Calloway, "Just sign here, Mother. It is for the roof repairs." However, as is my protocol, I asked to review the documents before witnessing the signature. Buried beneath the maintenance invoice was a document titled "Durable Power of Attorney," granting Mrs. Monica Watson full control over the Calloway financial assets and real estate holdings, effective immediately upon signature. "That is a lie," Aunt Kendra shouted from the side of the room. "He is lying. He is a paid actor." "Sit down, Kendra," Grandma said. Her voice was not loud. but it had the snap of a whip. "Let the man finish." Miles did not even blink at the interruption. He continued reading from his notes. "I asked Mrs. Calloway if she understood the document," Miles said. "She looked at me and asked if I was the doctor. It was clear she had taken her evening medication and was not in a state of lucidity required by law to execute a legal binding. I informed Mrs. Watson that I could not, in good conscience, notarize the signature. I told her it would be unethical and potentially criminal." He looked up from his notepad then, and for the first time, his eyes hardened. "Mrs. Watson then told me that if I did not notarize it, she would find someone who would. She told me that I was ruining the plan." She tried to guide Mrs. Calloway's hand to the paper anyway, hoping to get a signature that she could perhaps use later. I intervened. I packed my bag, and I left. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was the moment Cassidy had bragged about. She had told me the papers were signed. She had lied to me, or perhaps Monica had lied to her, telling her it was a done deal to keep Cassidy calm. They believed that because they had the will to deceive. The deed was as good as done. "The next morning," Miles said, "I returned to the house at 9 o'clock. Mrs. Watson was not there. Mrs. Calloway was having breakfast. She was alert. She was sharp. I informed her of what had transpired the night before. I informed her that her daughters had attempted to have her sign away her rights while she was sedated." He closed his notepad. "Mrs. Calloway thanked me," Miles said, "and she asked me to stay. She said she had some documents of her own that she wanted to draft. Documents that would reflect the reality of her situation, rather than the fiction her family was trying to construct." Miles stepped back from the podium. He picked up his briefcase and walked off the stage, disappearing back into the shadows as quickly as he had emerged. The room was silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning vents. Grandma stepped back up to the microphone. She looked taller now. The frailty that she sometimes carried seemed to have evaporated, replaced by a cold, burning, righteous anger. "You see," Grandma said, looking directly at Monica, "you thought I was a prop. You thought I was just a body that was taking too long to die. You thought you could come into my house, while I was vulnerable, and steal the life's work of your father and me." "Mother, it wasn't like that," Monica choked out. She was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a woman watching her social standing disintegrate in real time. "We were trying to protect you. You get confused. We wanted to make sure the estate was safe." "Safe from whom?" Grandma asked. "Safe from Ember, the girl who brings me soup? Or safe from the bank, because you have overdrawn your own accounts?" She opened the leather folder again. She pulled out a specific sheet of paper. It looked like a bank statement. "I have been doing some reading," Grandma said. "I have been looking into the old accounts, specifically. The trust fund that your father, my late husband, set up 20 years ago. The Grandpa Fund, as you called it in your group chat." I stiffened. This was it. The fund they had mocked me for not knowing about. "That fund," Grandma said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage, "was established with a principal of $400,000. It was meant to be an emergency safety net for all 3 grandchildren, Cassidy, her cousins, and Ember." She scanned the room. "It was meant to pay for education, for first homes, for medical emergencies. It was a gift of love from a man who worked himself into an early grave to provide it." She held up the paper. "The current balance of that fund is $12.43. A murmur of shock went through the crowd. This was not just family drama anymore. This was embezzlement. This was theft. "I looked at the withdrawal history," Grandma said. "It seems my signature was used many times over the last 7 years to authorize transfers. Transfers to consulting fees for Monica, transfers to lifestyle management for Cassidy, transfers that coincided perfectly with vacations to Cabo, with new cars, with the very renovation of the kitchen you all stood in while you laughed at Ember for being poor." She slammed the paper down on the podium. "You stole from her," Grandma declared. "You stole from your own blood. You took the money that was rightfully hers, And then you had the audacity to create a group chat to mock her for struggling to pay her rent. You bet on when she would break, while you were the ones swinging the hammer. She is lying. The scream came from Cassidy. She had broken away from her husband and was storming toward the stage. Her face was a mess of running mascara and twisted rage. She is lying, Cassidy shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. It is Ember. She is doing this. She manipulated her. Look at her. She is standing there in that dress, looking so innocent. She has been poisoning Grandma's mind against us for weeks. She is jealous because she is a failure. She wants the money for herself. She turned to the audience, her arms wide, pleading. Don't you see? Cassidy cried. Grandma is old. She doesn't know what she is saying. Ember typed this all up. Ember hired that actor. This is elder abuse. She is brainwashing her. It was a desperate, ugly Hail Mary. She was trying to use the very narrative they had constructed, that I was the unstable one, the desperate one, to invalidate the mountains of evidence piling up against them. Grandma did not yell. She did not argue. She simply waited for Cassidy to stop screaming. Then, she looked at Cassidy with an expression of profound disappointment. Cassidy, Grandma said softly into the microphone, Ember did not hire Mr. Voss. I did. Ember did not write these bank statements. The bank did. And Ember did not force you to spend 7 years mocking her in a text thread. You did that all on your own. But, Cassidy started. Enough, Grandma said. I am not brainwashed. I am not senile. And I am certainly not confused. I am the most awake person in this room. She reached into the podium one last time. She pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was sealed with red wax. The Calloway family crest was stamped into it. Tonight was supposed to be about legacy, Grandma said. And so it shall be. She held the envelope up. The lights caught the wax seal. This, she said, is my last will and testament, the real one, the one I drafted yesterday morning with Mr. Voss and my attorney, who is also standing at the back of the room. She nodded to a man in the shadows, a serious-looking lawyer everyone in town recognized. The sight of him made Uncle Rob sit down heavily in his chair, putting his head in his hands. He knew the game was over. For years, Grandma said, you have been waiting for me to die so you could read this document. You have been calculating your shares. You have been spending the money in your heads before my body was even cold. Well, I decided to save you the wait. I decided to read it to you while I am still here to see your faces. She tore the envelope open. The sound of the ripping paper was louder than a gunshot in the silent hall. And there is an addendum, she added, unfolding the document. A special clause regarding the stolen funds from the grandfather trust. She looked at Monica, then at Cassidy, then at Aunt Kendra. I told you the truth does not belong to the wicked, Grandma said. But tonight, neither does the money. She smoothed the paper out on the podium. Let's begin, she said. The room held its collective breath. I stood beside her, my hand still warm from where she had held it. I looked at Cassidy, who was now sobbing on the floor near the stage, her pink chiffon dress puddling around her like a deflated balloon. I looked at Monica, who was staring into the middle distance, seeing a future of social exile and financial ruin. And then I looked at Grandma. She wasn't looking at them. She was looking at the words she had written. She was reading the terms of their surrender. I, Margaret Calloway, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my will. The reading began, and with every word, the heavy, suffocating weight of the last 7 years began to lift off my shoulders, floating up into the rafters of Cloverbend Hall, leaving me light, leaving me free, leaving me, finally, clean. I had been the charity case. I had been the joke. But as Grandma's voice rang out, outlining the dismantling of their greed, I realized something. I was the only one walking out of this room with anything of value. I was walking out with my name. They were losing theirs. To my granddaughter, Ember Watson, Grandma read, her voice steady and echoing against the high vaulted ceiling of Cloverbend Hall. I bequeath the entirety of my primary residence at 42 Oak Lane, including all contents, furniture, and personal effects. Furthermore, I grant her sole executive management rights over the Callaway land holdings until such time as she sees fit to designate a successor. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. My mother, Monica, let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. It was the sound of a woman watching her future dissolve. The house on Oak Lane was not just a building. It was the crown jewel of the family. It was valued at over $2 million. It was the stage upon which Monica had planned to play out her golden years as the matriarch. "The house?" Monica whispered, her hand clutching the edge of the buffet table for support. "You gave her the house?" Grandma did not look up. She continued reading. "To my daughter Monica, my daughter Kendra, and my granddaughter Cassidy." Grandma continued. "I leave the remainder of my liquid assets and investment portfolio, to be divided equally among them." There was a collective exhale of relief from the frantic trio. They were still getting money. They were still getting the portfolio. I could see the calculation happening in Cassidy's eyes. She was thinking, "Okay, we lost the house, but we still get the cash. We can sue for the house later." But Grandma was not done. "However," she said, raising a finger, "this bequest is subject to a strict no-contest clause. If any beneficiary attempts to contest, challenge, or legally dispute any portion of this will, their entire share shall be immediately forfeited and donated in full to the Cloverbend Homeless Shelter." Grandma paused and looked directly at Cassidy. "Since you were so fond of calling Ember a charity case," Grandma said dryly, "I thought it only fitting that if you fight me, your inheritance goes to actual charity cases." The trap snapped shut. If they sued, they lost everything. If they accepted it, they had to watch me live in the house they coveted. It was a masterstroke. "And finally," Grandma said, picking up the second document, the addendum she had mentioned, "we must address the outstanding debt." "Debt?" Uncle Rob asked, his voice trembling. "What debt? The estate is solvent." "The estate is solvent," Grandma agreed, "but the grandfather trust is not. As I mentioned, nearly $400,000 was removed from that account over the last 7 years without my express written consent, using a digital signature that I did not authorize." She looked at the accountant standing in the back of the room. "I have instructed my legal team to treat these withdrawals not as gifts, but as loans," Grandma announced. "High-interest loans, therefore, the amount of $387,000, plus 4% annual interest, will be deducted from the shares of Monica Watson, Kendra Miller, and Cassidy Watson, proportionate to the amounts tracing back to their personal accounts." Cassidy let out a wail. "That is all of it." "If you deduct that, there will be nothing left." "Then I suggest you learn to budget," Grandma said coldly. "Or perhaps you can sell some of those handbags." She placed the papers down. "This will is effective immediately upon my passing," Grandma said. "However, the repayment of the stolen trust funds is effective immediately. My lawyer has the repayment schedules. If the funds are not returned to the trust within 90 days, we will be filing criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud." She looked at her family. "The choice is yours. You can be broke, or you can be felons, but you will not be thieves anymore." The fallout was instantaneous and violent. Aunt Kendra turned on Cassidy. The veneer of family unity shattered completely. "You said it was safe," Kendra screamed, shoving Cassidy hard in the shoulder. "You told me she never checked that account. You said it was a loophole." "I didn't know," Cassidy screamed back, stumbling in her pink chiffon dress. "Mom was the one who got the password. Blame her." "Don't you dare blame me," Monica shrieked, her face blotchy and distorted. "I did this for us. I paid for your wedding with that money. Cassidy, I paid for your honeymoon." "I didn't ask you to," Cassidy yelled. It was ugly. It was visceral. They were tearing each other apart in front of the mayor, in front of the bank president, in front of the entire town. They were revealing exactly who they were. They were not a dynasty. They were a pack of rats fighting over a sinking ship. The guests began to back away. Mr. Henderson turned his back on Monica and walked briskly toward the exit. The videographer, realizing the tone had shifted from legacy to legal evidence, finally lowered his camera, looking uncomfortable. Cassidy, realizing she was losing the room, threw herself at the stage. She grabbed the hem of Grandma's dress. "Gigi, please," she sobbed, genuine tears streaming down her face now. The tears of a child who has finally been told no. "Please don't do this. We are family. We made a mistake. We are sorry. Don't ruin us. Please. I will do anything. I will visit every day." Grandma looked down at her. She did not pull her dress away, but she did not reach down to comfort her either. "Get up, Cassidy," Grandma said. Her voice was not angry anymore. It was just tired. "You are embarrassing yourself. Punish me if you want," Cassidy begged. "Ground me. Cut me off for a month. But don't take the money, please." "I am not punishing you," Grandma said softly. "You are." "No," Grandma said. "Punishment is for children who don't know better. You are a 30-year-old woman. This is not a punishment. I am simply ending your privileges. You have lived on a scholarship of lies for 7 years. Tonight, you graduate." She looked over at me. "Ember," she said. I stepped forward. "Is there anything you would like to say?" Grandma asked. "You have the floor." I looked out at the room. I looked at Monica, who was slumped in a chair, staring at the floor. I looked at Kendra and Cassidy, still arguing in hushed, frantic tones. I looked at the crowd of people who had watched me being sidelined for years and said nothing. I could have screamed. I could have read the text messages out loud one by one. I could have told them exactly how much it hurt to be called a charity case, but I realized I didn't need to. They knew. Everyone knew. I walked to the microphone. "For 7 years," I said, my voice steady. "You called me the charity case. You treated me like an outsider who was lucky to be allowed in the room. You built a wall between us and told me I was on the other side of it." I looked directly at my mother. "I used to spend every day trying to climb over that wall," I said. "I used to think that if I was good enough, or rich enough, or smart enough, you would let me back in." I took a deep breath. "But tonight, I realized something. I don't want to come back in." I placed my hand on Grandma's shoulder. "I accept the boundary you created," I said. "I accept that I am not part of your clique. I will take care of Margaret. I will take care of the house. But I will not be seeking your approval anymore. The charity case is closed." I stepped back. There was no applause. It wasn't that kind of moment. There was just a heavy, final silence. "This event is over," Grandma announced. "Please drive safely." The exodus was swift. People did not linger to say goodbye to Monica. They did not exchange pleasantries. They practically ran for the doors, eager to distance themselves from the scandal. Within 10 minutes, the great hall was empty, save for the catering staff clearing the untouched food. Monica, Kendra, and Cassidy stood alone in the center of the room. They looked small. They looked ordinary. Grandma and I walked past them. We did not stop. We walked out the front doors, down the stone steps, and to the valet stand. The valet brought my 10-year-old sedan around. "Shall I bring the convertible for your sister?" the valet asked. "No," I said. "They can call a cab." We drove away in silence. We went back to the house on Oak Lane. The real house, not the venue. I made tea. We sat in the living room, the same room where I had spent so many nights nursing her back to health. The fire was crackling in the hearth. The silence here was different. It wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Grandma took a sip of her tea and looked at me. "You were brave tonight, Ember," she said. "I was terrified," I admitted. "That is what makes it brave," she said. She reached out and patted my hand. "Are you sad?" she asked. About losing them? I thought about it. I thought about the group chat. I thought about the betting pools. I thought about the way Monica looked at me when she realized the money was gone. I don't think I lost them, I said slowly. I don't think I ever really had them. You can't lose something that was never yours. Grandma nodded. She leaned her head back against the chair, closing her eyes. You didn't lose a family, Ember, she said softly. You lost an illusion. It hurts to lose an illusion, but it is necessary if you want to see the world clearly. I looked out the window. The snow had started to fall, covering the driveway in a blanket of clean, white silence. For the first time in 7 years, my phone was quiet. No notifications, no anxiety, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The debt was paid. The truth was out. The ledger was balanced. I started, searching for the word. Empty? Grandma suggested. No, I said. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the warm air of the house that was now my home. Light. I feel light. I can finally breathe. And in the quiet of that winter night, sitting next to the only person who had ever truly seen me, I finally did. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I poured a lot of emotion into Ember's journey, and I hope you felt that justice was served. Please comment down below where you are listening from. I would love to know how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Leona Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button so we can get this story out to more people who need a reminder that sometimes the good guys do win. Stay strong, and see you in the next one.